I'm so delighted to be here this morning, and thanks so much for the introduction. So I'm Mary Harris. I'm a specialist in place branding and marketing, and I've been working with East Suffolk Council and the Suffolk Coast team to really build a strong approach to growing tourism together. And I think it's just worth starting with the scale of what it is that we're trying to protect and we're trying to grow here, because it's really clear that tourism is so important to the Suffolk coast. In 2024, we actually hosted 12.4 million visitors, and they brought in 729 million to the local economy. So we're talking about a really substantial amount of investment that is actually coming in through tourism. And 1 in every 6 jobs in the Suffolk coast is actually within tourism itself. And 40 pence in every tourism pound is spent on food and drink. So when we're talking about growing tourism, I think it's important to remember that what we're actually talking about is supporting local jobs and supporting local businesses. But today, we're not actually capturing the full value that tourism promises. If people are coming, we do have fantastic footfall here. And if you look at places like Devon and places like Cornwall, hopefully the pink is kind of showing up on here, it's looking a bit faded from my angle. But you can see we're really winning on that measure. But when it comes to actually converting day visits to stay visits, this is where we're losing out. Because Suffolk might have 131% more visitors than Cornwall, but Cornwall actually has 135% more staying visitors than Suffolk. So that really strong footfall that we see, we're not translating that into really strong value. In fact, we actually attract far less revenue per visitor than lots of our other set. And Cornwall's visitors are actually spending 120% more than Suffolk's. So a really interesting opportunity there for us. Only 5% of our current visitors actually spend the night in the Suffolk coast. So that's quite a small proportion. But those 5% actually generate 28% of the value. So they're incredibly valuable to us. So a staying guest in the Suffolk coast is actually worth up to 6 times as much as a day visitor. And if we were able to increase those staying visitors by just 1%, then that would contribute 30 million to the local economy. So we're talking about some really small proportions here that actually, if we were to shift that, we could unlock suddenly a huge amount to support tourism here. So that all sounds kind of easy, right? We don't have, there's a lot of untapped tourism value that we could start to realise. So what is it that's actually standing in our way of doing that? So from our research, we can see that neither Suffolk nor the Suffolk coast are currently top of mind for tourism. When people go on Google and they're looking for a UK holiday, it's places like Devon and Cornwall that are coming into their minds. And you can see that in the kind of pink and the orange on here, where we're getting those big spikes. And Norfolk and Suffolk in the teal and in the blue, we register far, far less. And search trends like this do really matter because they're a direct reflection of how much share of mind your destination has in the minds of their visitors. So if people aren't searching for you, then they're just not planning to come and stay. And despite that large visitor base that we talked about, that really strong footfall, we're actually getting far lower recommendation rates for our attractions than other places in our set. In fact, less than 1 review per 1,000 visitors. And again, jumping back to Cornwall, they're much smaller visitor base. They're generating 16 times the number of reviews that we're getting here in Suffolk. And we all know, of course, how important reviews and recommendations are. especially in an AI-driven world when the LLMs are really drawing on all of that third-party validation. And it's not that we don't have fantastic assets. You know, we do. We've got assets equally as good or better than places like Cornwall and Devon. We've got beautiful beaches, really vibrant culture, ancient history, you know, a very enviable food and drink scene. We have a huge amount here, but those assets on their own, they're just not enough to attract attention and attract interest. And it's not that we lack promotion. You know, everybody in this room, all these kind of different organisations and businesses will be spending money, spending resources on great initiatives. But to date, these have been relatively siloed. We've been operating separately. And when all of that good stuff is fragmented, it just doesn't add up to something bigger that does a stronger job for the region. It's only when we bring all of those efforts together and that we stop kind of running to stand still that we can build that shared momentum and that shared impact and create just a rising tide that raises all ships. But we have a really huge opportunity right now. You know, most destinations in the UK are struggling. They have reduced tourism budgets. They don't know whether they're going to continue to be funded, you know, the next year or the year after that. There's not real consistency with those budgets, so ad hoc decisions have to be made. But we're in a very different position here. We do have secure, consistent, long-term tourism funding. And that puts us in a very, very rare position. We can not just do more, but we can be a lot more strategic about it. And I think that being strategic is something that is really rare, that opportunity. So for the first time, we can bring three key ingredients together. An investment in data and insight that will let us really understand our visitors, also what our gaps are and what our opportunities are. A pipeline of strategic initiatives that cross everything from product development, place infrastructure, business support, marketing. And a focus on pathways to integration, the structure, the assets that we need, and a real intention to shift from just operating in silos to working together to build something with much more impact. And I think this is what today is really all about. It's about working together to build that growth system for the Suffolk coast that everybody is part of, and really unlocking that economic potential of our tourism offering. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of the speakers today, and I think the sessions later on will be fantastic for that. So thank you so much.